Injuries, injuries, injuries. That seems to be the theme after week 2 of NFL action. Where do we go from here? What do we do? We're 0-2. Where do we go? How do we get past this start of the season? Well, we lace up our bootstraps. We tighten them up. We put our shoe on one after the other, and we move on to week 3. And that's what we are here to help you do. Let's get into it.
I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, it's 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats, to turn to a ghost, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the info you get is by letting them talk, so I'm letting them talk.
Welcome into another edition of Another Damn Fantasy Podcast. Here with you, Josh is on his way, putting the kids to bed. I was the one that was actually late tonight, so apologize for that. We might have to do some housekeeping and move this back to 8:30 start times. But for now, we're here. Week 2 was another crazy week. Some of the things that we thought were true or overreacted to week 1 ended up becoming true and or underreaction in week 2. And there's a lot of injuries out there. And so that's going to be the bulk of the beginning of the show, just trying to talk through some of those injuries. And then we'll obviously get into our starts and sits of the week as we go through. Another Damn Fantasy Podcast here, presented by Bite Size Sports. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Bite Size Sports channel. Necessary Roughness on Tuesday nights live, talking all things NFL. We're here every Wednesday night talking fantasy football for you. And on Thursday nights, our NBA podcast is just around the corner, firing that back up as the NBA season starts to get here, because we're already middle of September, y'all. Already the middle of September, which just kind of feels crazy to think about. 2 weeks into the NFL season. How are you guys' teams doing? Let me know in the chat. How are you doing? Are you 2-0, 1-0? I mean, I know most of us have more than one team, but think about that big team, that main team. How is it going for you so far? I've got a couple that have been all right, a couple that haven't been so all right. So we'll get into that. I'm going to hold our quick reaction for when Josh makes it in. I want him to be able to give his quick reaction as well. Give me a second. Cool. He is on his way. So I'm just going to get into some injury news, because a lot of this stuff you guys already know about by now, right? We all know now Pacheco's out for 6 to 8 weeks. We know the Chiefs have now signed Kareem Hunt. But for me, the fantasy relevancy here is what we really need to talk about. I don't need to tell you the news. You all see that on Twitter and X and everywhere else, whatever you want to call it. But for me here, I think Carson Steele probably gets 60% of the touches. I don't think he'll get 60% of the snaps. I think P. Ryan will probably be out there more often, because I think actually what ends up happening, I think the Chiefs end up passing the ball a lot more. Maybe they go back to the pass-happy Chiefs they used to be. Mahomes has to play better. He didn't play really super well last year until it mattered. He has to play better now. He obviously, they have the INT, not interception, the pass interference, goodness, going on to get into field goal range, so they win that ball game. But Mahomes did not play well that game, and he's gonna have to start playing better. So I do think they'll pass the ball a heck of a lot more. I think Fantasy Outlook probably helps guys like Kelsey and Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. And then Carson Steele and Samaje P. Ryan for me are not startable this week. I think I would rather wait a week and see what happens. Cooper Kupp avoids the IR here. Kind of surprising. I thought they said he was going to be out 4 to 5 weeks, so why not just put him on the IR? Maybe that's not the case. For my big dynasty team, I definitely hope it's not the case. But for me, again, this comes down to fantasy value. I think it hurts Kyron Williams because now they don't really have much of a passing offense. They don't have much of an offensive line anyways. So I think this hurts Kyron Williams to have both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua out. And I'm not touching any of these wide receivers. I'm not starting any of them, right? I think Jordan Whittington, we can pick him up. I think that we can – thanks. I think we can pick up who is a Tutu Atwell? I think we can pick him up. Those kind of guys you can pick up, but they're not startable this week. You definitely need to wait that out and kind of see how that goes. Who else is on the injury list? A.J. Brown, going to miss 2 weeks, potentially. It sounds like maybe even more. That is a tough break. At least they told us that he was going to miss Sunday morning, so you didn't have to deal with your lineups come Monday like we had to deal with Christian McCaffrey. But, again, another kind of late to the injury. He hurt his hamstring in practice. I think it was on Friday. Not a great situation. Going to be out a couple weeks. I think Devontae Smith is a must start each and every week for you at that point. Deebo Samuel looking to miss a couple weeks. Without Christian McCaffrey, without Deebo Samuel, I think that George Kittle becomes a probably a top tier tight end, like maybe 1 or 2 or 3 with the way the tight ends are playing right now. I think Brandon Ayuk, although he was probably already a must start, is definitely a must start now. So definitely get him back in your starting lineups if you are holding out for him to kind of show up. I think you just got to put him in there now because the 49ers have to go to somewhere. And then there's a couple guys here that are injured that I'm just going to tell you just to check the practice reports this week, right? Ken Walker missed last week to abdominal injury. Charbonnet looked okay. I didn't think he was great, but he looked okay. So Ken Walker missed last week. He should be back this week, but check the practice reports. Joe Mixon is kind of lingering, questionable whether he'll play or not. If he doesn't play, I think you can fire up Cam Akers this week. So if he doesn't play, I think you can fire up Cam Akers. Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown both left their games. Both of them have pretty positive comments since then, so they should be fine. Josh Downs has been out all year. He's looking to make his season debut. We talked about Alec Pierce in the party or pass segment last week. How does that look with Josh Downs coming back after another great game by Alec Pierce this week? So does Josh Downs take over the Alec Pierce role, or did Alec Pierce already kind of solidify himself as that role? So that's still to be determined. But I think if Josh Downs is out there on your waiver wire, I think he's a guy worth stashing at the end of your bench. And then 2 tight ends, Jake Ferguson looking like he might be back sooner than later. 1 week ago, we thought he might have torn something, and here we are thinking he might actually play this week. And David Njoku, who missed week 2, is doubtful for week 3. So not looking great there for David Njoku. Did I miss anybody that's injured? If so, let me know in the chat. I will definitely talk through what I think fantasy relevancy. That's what I care more about is like, how is it going to affect your fantasy teams? We don't need to beat the news down. I just want to tell you how it affects the fantasy. One other piece of news. Bryce Young getting benched, I think actually helps some of our stuff. I think it helps Deontay Johnson a little bit. I'm not going to start Deontay Johnson this week, but I do think Sam Darnold being in there, or not Sam Darnold, Jesus. Andy, the Red Rocket, right? He's back. I do think that helps Deontay Johnson there. Hopefully Xavier Legette as the rookie there. So that's the news. Glad we could get through that real quick while we got Josh here. Josh, bringing you in here. Josh, how's it going, man?
Oh, pretty good. Can you hear me?
Bed. Oh, yeah.
All right, nice.
A baseball that runs long. Got kids we got to put to bed.
Yes.
we made it. We are here.
Life is very hectic.
All I did was skip to the news so we could just get through that. So I
That's
wanted
perfect.
to keep the quick reaction up here at the top for us. But before we get into that, How you feeling after week 2? How'd that treat you?
It didn't go particularly great. I'm not panicked though. I had a better week 1. So last year I was 0-2 at this time in a majority of my leagues, so I was in kind of early panic mode. This week I still feel like I'm in pretty good shape. The guys that haven't produced for me, I still believe in. We'll talk about, I know one of them for sure down the road. Tank Dell let me down a little bit. George Pickens continues to let me down, but I don't know if that's my fault for trusting the Steelers offense. It could very well be the case, but I ignored everyone saying, Pat Surtain and the Denver Broncos secondary. And so I'm kind of buying that. I'm buying their pass defense, even though as a team, they're not super great, but I have guys that I think will still come around. So I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good, actually.
Yeah. A couple weeks in, we're starting to kind of understand what defenses are going to be defenses we want to attack in fantasy football, which ones that we want to just lower our expectations. Doesn't mean we'll always sit guys against them, but if it's a flex worthy guy, maybe we sit them that week if it's against a tougher defense. So we're starting to kind of get some of the information come in after 2 weeks now, after we kind of overreacted to week 1, as of course we're going to there. Right. All right, let's jump right into our quick reactions from week 2. Josh, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, so I think I caught your little tagline right when I popped in. It was like, "Where's the elite tight ends?" I'm lost on tight ends right now. I mean, I've been high on Trey McBride, and I needed him in a league, and he fell on a fumble for a touchdown for me. Like that's how I got my points. That was a big 6 points, but we're still waiting on Dalton Kincaid to turn it around. My rookie pick Ben Sinnott has 0 targets on the year for Washington. I mean, there are some good tight ends, but it feels like it's a weird position. Travis Kelce hasn't done much. I think I saw he has only 7 total targets on the year, which is kind of mind-boggling as well. And so I think it's just a position in flux right now. I think there's still a lot of talent. Oh, Sam Laporta, the guy I drafted, the only guy I considered drafting over McBride. I took him in our ADP league here, and he's been real lackluster as well. And so it's kind of just it's a weird position, and I'm hoping it kind of levels out. But my spotlight's kind of on the tight ends right now. I mean, our quarterback positions are down too, or quarterback production feels like it's down as well. But we talked about, I brought it up last week. It's the rushing quarterback upside is just furthering itself away from the pack.
Yeah.
So we didn't need to mention that too much now. The tight end position feels weird to me. That's kind of where my head's at right now. I don't know.
Yeah. Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce, Dalton Kincaid.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are all outside the top 12.
Yeah.
After 2 weeks. And these are all the guys that we are drafting at the top.
Yep.
Luckily, Brock Bowers has been great. Like you said, Trey McBride falls on the fumble for a touchdown to help out. George Kittle has a great game with Debo out, CMC out. I kind of talked a little bit about that just a minute ago with put him at the top of the list probably for tight ends now.
Right.
But yeah, outside of that, I mean, you got guys like Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki in the top 10 right now. So kind of crazy. I would agree with you. It's just odd, but those are kind of things that usually works themselves out.
Right.
Those 4 tight ends that I mentioned, they're all elite, and I wouldn't be necessarily worried about them quite yet. So I think they'll all kind of work themselves out. For me, it's just the amount of injuries we're seeing. And it's, my reaction to this is it can become very easy to be frustrated.
Right.
You might be sitting at 0-2. Maybe you just lost Pacheco, or Cooper Kupp's now going to hurt an ankle. And it's a long season. And that's, for me, it's the quick reaction is we're annoyed, we're frustrated. Maybe we're 0-2, but you have to just remember it's a long season. Right. Time to dig in a little bit, make some moves, make some trades, work that waiver wire.
Yep.
But don't quit.
No.
Don't be frustrated. Just be patient, evaluate your options, and let's move forward to week 3. Let's figure it out together.
Yeah, it's a reminder that in fantasy, we talk every week about what we like and what we think and what makes sense, and we follow people that have a lot of quote unquote proof about who's going to be great and things like that. But at the end of the day, availability is the best ability, and you cannot predict injuries. And so you don't want to operate assuming guys are going to get injured. I will say I've lucked out a little bit with injury this year, but also partly due to planning on my part. I have a league where I have Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, and I have a league where I have Devon Achane and Jalen Wright. And I can this past week was a little bit of a nod to getting a handcuff like that, because I was able to start Zach Charbonnet and not have any stress, and waiting for the news on Achane before last week's Thursday game. I was like, well, if he sits, then I think I'm going to give the upside potential Jalen Wright a chance. It was just going to be him and Jeff Wilson because Mostert was already out. So if you have a deep enough bench, I know we do a lot more redraft here. That's a keeper league that I'm in, so it's a lot easier to have some depth on your bench. But I think there is, and it's hard to predict which backfields you're going to, need to do that for. But there is some anecdotal proof or anecdotal evidence, I would say, for handcuffing your guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to do that with dynasty leagues as well. Like just get into having the backfield. I've got Rico Dowdle and Zeke on a team,
Right.
Let it work itself out. I have Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard on that same team.
Right.
Just let it work itself out, and you'll end up, hopefully being able to start one or the other each and every week. All right, let's get into biggest wins of week number 2. I'll get us started here. Mine is Malik Neighbors, man.
Oh, yeah.
I came on here last week. I knew they were playing the Washington Commanders. I knew it was going to be a bad defense. I said start Malik Neighbors after, kind of a lackluster week 1, but I just kind of pointed out to everyone that the underlying usage was very, very good for Malik Neighbors in week 1. He had 7 targets in week 1. It just didn't really pan out to a whole lot. And then in week 2, he comes out and he has 18 of the team's 27 targets. So
that is
66% target share, baby. And this time he actually, he does great with it, right? 10 catches, 127 yards. He gets the touchdown, and he finished in maybe top 5. 3rd overall in PPR scoring for Malik Neighbors, just behind Marvin Harrison Jr. and DK Metcalf, who both had monstrous games. So easy win for me in the Malik Neighbors call. Just that was like one example of, and Marvin Harrison, who's at the very top of the list. Even DK Metcalf, DK Metcalf had less than 6 points in the first week. But these, guys at the top of the list for the wide receiver scoring in week 2 weren't up there in week 1. So it's just a really good reminder. Like, this is a week-to-week game.
Yeah.
And just because it didn't happen in week 1 doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It happens for Malik Neighbors this week in my start of the week.
Yeah, that's awesome. 18 targets is insane. That doesn't matter the percentage. That doesn't matter the percentage. If you get half those targets, you're happy. I couldn't believe that number when I saw the final one. So, yeah, good call on Malik Neighbors. It was good to see him do well. And I don't have Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think in any of my leagues somehow. But I was probably like everybody when he had that first big long touchdown. I was just happy. I was happy for him because I was happy for everyone else because everyone loves Marvin Harrison. We were just expecting him to be great, and I think we all just wanted to be like, "Yep, see, he is going to be good. This offense is going to produce." So that was good regardless. My biggest win of the week was on this show last week. I said start Brock Bowers, and he goes 9 catches for 9 targets, 98 yards, and I love that. He finished as tight end 3. The Raiders somehow beat the Ravens, and that was
weird.
I mean, who knows what's going on there? But
the Falcons beat the Eagles after the Eagles have a 97% chance to win.
Yes.
Yeah. Weird. NFL's weird, man.
Yeah, it's super weird. But I like that Brock Bowers continually getting targets. I like that he caught all of his targets, and I like that he had in a PPR league. I mean, that's close to 20 points. And he didn't have to rely on a touchdown for that. And that's a huge deal for a tight end position, right? Like when the volume is not always consistent, or if you can get a consistent volume guy at tight end that Bowers is a couple weeks into proving he might be, that's huge. You don't have to count. You don't have to hunt for touchdowns with Hunter Henry, right? Like that's something that people have done for years now. And so it was that was my biggest win, I would say, is getting on the Brock Bowers train early last week. So
yeah, Brock Bowers top number 3 overall tight end both weeks. So if you drafted him and started him and trusted him, as Josh pointed out, you did well. Just give a couple shout outs here in the chat. What's up, Sports and Money KC? So I've watched these guys, this podcast. I need to get in. I need to know these guys a little bit more. It looks like they might be potentially some Chiefs fans. So
there you go.
I need to know a little bit more about them. Lee is in the chat.
Are you guys worried about the Falcons now after they took down the Eagles?
No, I don't think we can say we're worried. I don't think I'm worried about the Falcons. I think I'm worried about the left tackle. But I mean, I'm not really worried about it against the Falcons. I'm more worried about our left tackle. He's a rookie. Oh, God, what was he, like second or third round pick? I can't say his name. I'm not even going to try to say his name.
Sua Mataia is what I
said. Yeah.
I don't know if that's accurate.
Great job. But it's a lot closer than I would have gotten. So, old co-host here on ADP, Dan Portillo, they do their Chiefs podcast, and they talk a lot about they get into like position by position stuff, and over on the Fastest 40. And preseason they were talking up this left tackle, and I think he actually will be great over time. But man, he was getting kicked by Henderson. Like Trey Henderson just was eating his lunch. So I'm not really, excited about that when you have to play teams like the Raiders and Max Crosby and the Bengals and Trey Henderson. So that kind of I'm worried about, but I don't think the Atlanta Falcons have something going on like that. So I might have missed them, but I don't think they got a pass rush like that. So I'm not as worried.
Fair enough.
About the Falcons. I am looking forward to that Sunday night football game, though. Should have plenty of fireworks. The Chiefs, little known fact, second most passing yards per game given up through 2 weeks. So maybe it'll be a nice, refresher for Atlanta Falcons pass catchers going up against this Chiefs defense on Sunday Night Football. All right, let's get to our biggest losses of the week. I will let you go first on this one.
My little tagline says it all. Last week I was easy pickings. I thought Justin Fields throwing the deep ball against a bad Denver team. I didn't care about the Pat Surtain coverage. I was like, Pickens is going to go for, even if he only has 4 or 5 catches, they're going to be for over 100 yards. I was very confident, and he totally dropped the ball. He had 2 catches, 29 yards, wide receiver 64. And this Steelers offense, I guess I apologize for trusting them. I don't know where I went wrong with that, but he's a guy I've been high on all season. I have him in a few leagues, and I thought that with the target percentage he was going to get, the target share percentage, because they don't have any other receiver. Once Deontay Johnson left, I thought even if they didn't throw it for a ton of yards, it was like most of it should be going to Pickens. He's a great blocker. He loves to block, so he's always going to be on the field in the Arthur Smith run-heavy offense. And so I was like, he's going to put up a good floor is what my thought was. And now we're 2 weeks in. First week was respectable. That's why I got excited about last week. I thought he was going to kind of take off. And so I'm not giving up on George Pickens yet. I'm still factoring in the defense he was up against last week. But I'm a little concerned, and at least for now, it's got to look like a loss, especially for week 2. It was for sure a loss if you started Pickens. So.
Yeah, potentially better days ahead for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You got the Chargers, Colts, Cowboys defense doesn't look great right now.
Right.
So maybe the next couple weeks, they're playing a little bit easier defenses than the Denver Broncos, which is weird, but that's who the Denver Broncos are. They want to like build their team similar to the Steelers. Right. They want to run the football and play great defense. So. That makes a lot of sense there. My biggest loss of the week, goodness. I came on here, and right after I said start Malik Neighbors, I said sit Calvin Ridley coming off of a 3-catch, 50-yard game against the Chicago Bears, going up against the New York Jets, who have shut down corners themselves. Thought, no way is he going to – Will Levis looked like trash. 4 catches, 77 yards, and a touchdown. Even then, you could get away with it. You could have got away with sitting him. Put him on a bench, like, 4 for 7. But then he gets a rush for 10 yards and a touchdown. So you're adding on another 7 points for that. Now you're looking at him on your bench and you're kind of frustrated. So
Absolutely.
big L for me last week saying sit Calvin Ridley and sitting Calvin Ridley. So I didn't like to see him on my bench.
If it makes you feel any better,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. If it makes you feel any better, I sat Calvin Ridley in favor of Pickens and Tank Dell in a league and lost my week because of it. He would have won my week. I didn't lose by that much. He would have won my week.
Yeah, it's tough. Tank Dell. Nico Collins is kind of just looks like he's trying to just take over that offense.
He looks great, by the way. Nico Collins looks on fire.
Looks phenomenal. Lee says they have Matthew Judon from what, the Patriots, right? Used to be the Patriots.
Patriots and then Patriots.
Now it's the Falcons.
Yep.
But is he an edge rusher?
Yeah.
I'm not a good X's and O guy. Like, give me all the fantasy stuff you want, but I leave the X's and O's up to Necessary Roughness on Tuesday nights.
Oh yeah.
They'll get in the weeds for you all, but maybe he'll cause some issues.
Yeah, I think Judon is listed as like an outside linebacker technically, but yeah, he's an edge rusher. He's got a pretty good track record for sure. Yeah, Atlanta's defense is legit, but not like fully shut down, I would say. But
well, we will have to see how that goes. Hopefully, the Chiefs just come out and pass the ball 50 times. On to our next segment of Panic or Patience. This week, we just put out one position or one player per position, cut it down from the 3 players we had last week. Some weeks we might end up doing a couple more, but we'll see how this goes this week. If you're in the chat with us tonight, if you are panicking or you just want us to talk about a certain player that maybe is on your team and you need to know, should you be panicking or being patient with them, drop it in the chat. We'll talk through that as well as we go. Mm-hmm. But first, we'll get started with the quarterback. Caleb Williams ends up as quarterback is currently quarterback 31 through the first 2 weeks. He was also outscored by Jacoby Brissett the first 2 weeks. Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall draft pick. Josh, are we panicking or are we being patient?
I'm surprisingly going to be patient with him for like one more week. I think I'm factoring in a little bit of rookie growing pains. I'm factoring in he's gone up against some real tough defenses. Tennessee and Houston are no slouch in the defensive department. And I think that he's got the weapons around him, and I think he's got a shot. So I'm going to give him one more week because he goes up against the Colts this week, who the Colts have a front 7 that I like. I'm not scared of their defensive backfield. And so with his scrambling ability, I think if he gets in a little bit of a rhythm early on, I think we can see a turnaround game. I'm not going to put him as my start of the week. I kind of thought about it as like a fun outlier, but I was like, no, that's too much of a reach to put him in as a start of the week right now. He's not ready for that. You have to be cautious with him, and you're probably not starting him. But I would definitely hold on to him if you're keeping 2 quarterbacks and he was like your upside guy and you have a stable guy. Lee says panic for sure. I understand the panic for sure. We were all crowning him before he even threw a pass. But I think that this week is a chance for him to get into a little bit of a rhythm and take some strides and kind of have the game slow down for him a little bit. If he has another rough week this week though against the Colts, then I will be full on panic mode. So my patience with him is dwindling, but he's got another week for me.
Now, so I'm in panic mode. I agree with Lee here. Panic for sure. But it's not really necessarily because of Caleb Williams. Like I don't think this offensive line can hold up. They don't seem like they can hold up, and that really worries me. And you're now kind of rushing a rookie quarterback and whatnot. He's got all the weapons in the world he needs. I thought DeAndre Swift was going to be okay. He doesn't seem to be great either. But again, this offensive line is really, really bad. And so I think that's a big problem and kind of making me panic a little bit more. But if you don't want to panic, if you want to be patient, listen to this schedule, Josh. You talk about the Colts, all right? And maybe the Colts front 7 kind of tears them up a little bit.
Right.
But after this week, you got the Los Angeles Rams, no pass rush. Carolina Panthers are trash.
No anything.
Jacksonville Jaguars defense has not really been great. The whole team's kind of been a dumpster fire. Washington Commanders, bad defense. Arizona Cardinals, no pass rush. And then you got the Patriots, Packers, and Vikings, and those are going to be 3 tough games. But that's 5 straight games against defenses that are just not good.
Right.
So I'm in panic mode because I don't think the offensive line is great.
Yep.
I personally am not going to go out and try to buy low on Caleb Williams. But if you were to ask me to argue that, like, why would you buy low on Caleb Williams? That's why. Because those are 5 really simple matchups in the NFL right now. And 5 defenses that either don't have a pass rush or they're just flat trash. Right?
Yeah.
Like the Cardinals defense looked fine against the Rams, but they still didn't have a pass rush. Like they weren't like, you're not worried about that pass rush. So that's that's where I don't know. Do you think that plays into, like, would you go buy low on Caleb Williams?
Yeah, well, and that's kind of why I was saying, like, hopefully when you drafted him as an upside guy with someone else. Hopefully he wasn't your only quarterback going in. Like, I don't think you should drop him, and that's kind of like a buy low. Like, if you're really stacked at one position and you want some upside, I still think that he's still Caleb Williams. He's still one of the best prospects we've seen in a while. And like you said, that string of games is very, very friendly for fantasy purposes. Plus he had 30 rushing yards the last game. Like, he's going to scramble for some yards. Like, he just needs to figure some things out. The game needs to slow down. Yeah, the offensive line is going to be scary, but he's mobile enough where he can work around that. I think if DeAndre Swift gets going, who's someone I think might get going again this week, like, I think there's hope, and that's why I'm holding out hope. Now, if they have like another flop performance against the Colts, then I'm not considering him until something drastic happens. But yeah, I think if you're stacked at a position and someone's desperate to get off of him and get something else, why not?
If he flops against the Colts, he might go to the waiver wire. People might be dropping him.
Right.
And if that's the case, I'm gonna scoop him up and put it on the end of the bench if I have a spot available.
Right.
All right, let's go to running back here, Najee Harris. He's running back 33 in PPR leagues through 2 weeks. He's had 37 attempts for 139 yards. For those of you who are not X's and O's, that is not efficient.
Nope.
That is bad for the NFL. 0 touchdowns. He's only had 2 catches for 14 yards, and he's finished outside the top 25 both weeks in fantasy football. The Pittsburgh Steelers, first 2 weeks of action. Who did they face? It wasn't bad.
They had the Falcons, and then they had the
Falcons are decent defense, and then the Broncos. So you got to take the defenses a little bit into account here. If we're gonna look at game logs, we're gonna look at, because there's Jalen Warren there as well. He's not getting as much opportunity as I thought he would be getting. He's only got 11 touches last week, 4 touches the first week. He's not really cutting in. Cordero Patterson's there with 6 touches already this year.
Yep.
I am in panic mode because I think if you drafted Najee Harris, you probably drafted him as your RB2. You probably drafted him with the expectation that he was going to get, a heavy workload. And he has 21 touches in week 1, 18 touches in week 2. You're not necessarily like mad about the workload, but he's so inefficient and he's not going anywhere. He's averaging 3.5 yards per carry, but he's not like moving the line much for you outside the top 25 2 weeks in a row. I'm panicked on Najee Harris just because I think you probably drafted him as your RB2, and I'm not sure we're going to get much more than what we've gotten. 20 for 70 yards, 17 for 69 yards. That's going to be what we're going to get every single week. And and then he's going to get the touchdowns, but like when and how, and how are you going to guess that? Right. So I'm panicked on Najee Harris. I don't think he's necessarily a guy with huge upside, and I don't want to sit here and guess when he's going to score touchdowns.
Yeah, sadly, I'm in panic mode with you on Najee Harris. I have him in a league, and I've started him. In one league, I've started him both week 1 and week 2, just especially with the banged up injury to Jalen Warren. There were reports in camp that Najee Harris was a little bit leaner this season. They had Arthur Smith coming in, new offense. They were going to run the ball. And so all signs are pointing to a lot of volume, which hopefully meant a decent floor of production. But yeah, it's been scary, the inefficiency. And in the past, when Najee Harris has been inefficient because they've had offensive line problems in Pittsburgh for a while, this year I thought it was going to get better. I thought they drafted well for that, but that's a different story. When he was inefficient in his early years of his career, he was getting tons of targets out of the backfield, or at least a decent amount of targets. Last game he had I think he had 14 carries, I think, last week, but he only had 2 targets and 1 catch. And like, if he's not going to get both, this offense isn't scoring enough touchdowns anyway. So even if he was decently efficient, it would be hard to chase touchdowns. So I think Najee Harris will be a weird one this year. I think he'll have games, like you said, be hard to decide when to put him in to get touchdowns. I think he'll have games because the Steelers are just always a good team. They're always going to be competitive, always going to get wins. And so there'll be games where he scores a couple touchdowns, or at least a touchdown, and gets a couple extra catches. And then you might get some false hope again. Like, okay, well, maybe it's his time. But I'm in panic mode as well, because I still feel like Jaylen Warren is going to get more and more involved as he comes back from his injury. I know he's been playing, but I still think he's going to be a factor. And I think the offense in general in Pittsburgh is just on. They don't need to be great, and so there's no urgency for them to be more productive. And so, as long as they're winning games with this method, they're just hard to trust. And so, yeah, I'm in panic mode on Najee. I'm not sure I'm starting him. I might start a player at flex that's got a little bit more upside, because if he's your best RB2, you have to really think through some things and see who you got on your bench. Maybe you have a rookie running back like a Bucky Irving who might get more touches coming up, things like that you would maybe consider. But yeah, if it's tough sledding if he's your number 2, because you might still have to start him, and you just kind of have to hope he gets to 10 points, which is not super.
It's not fun.
Promising.
It's not fun. There's just no ceiling there. I don't, and that's what's. Yeah, he will score maybe 4 or 5 touchdowns this year, but you're never gonna know when. The 2-0 Pittsburgh Steelers leading the AFC North.
Yep.
1 game over the Cleveland Browns and 2 games over the Cincinnati Bengals and Baltimore Ravens. So weird stuff happening in the AFC North. They've got the Chargers this week, who are going to try to rely on that defense as well. The only last thing I'll say here is Jaylen Warren did outsnap him in week 2, 48% to Najee's 45%. I don't really think that'll hold over time, but I do think Jaylen Warren is the more explosive back there.
Yep.
All right, Amari Cooper at wide receiver. He's currently sitting wide receiver 83, just 3.9 PPR points averaging through the first 2 weeks. This Cleveland Browns offense looks inept. Deshaun Watson looks terrible.
Yep.
Not really sure what to get. But for me, I'm just saying I'm going to be patient right now for Amari Cooper. I'm going to sit him on my bench, which might mean you're going to end up missing out on a 30 burger, right? Like, he has that ability just in his arsenal to just blow up and go off. But I'm willing to just put him on my bench right now. I'm going to be patient, but I'm not going to be playing him or starting him unless I just really love the matchup. But right now, this offense hasn't given me anything that I like to see. Even going against the Giants, I don't know, the Giants this week, shit.
Yeah.
Do we have to put him back in? I don't want to start him.
Right.
Like, I'm definitely not starting him next week against the Raiders.
Right.
But you can't drop him. I don't want to panic yet, because he's so good as a wide receiver. He's so explosive, but he just looks bad, and this Browns offense looks bad.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It's weird because by name recognition alone, you can't drop him. Like, you can't put Amari Cooper on waivers because he's been in Cleveland for a while, and he's been able to produce. And they have the Giants next week, and then they have the Raiders. After that, they have the Commanders and the Eagles, who give up some stuff through the air as well. And so I don't doubt the talent with Amari Cooper. I'm with you on the Browns offense. It's just so inept that I don't feel good about starting any of those guys. If I'm in a 3 receiver league, I think I feel okay with Amari Cooper starting as a wide receiver 3. But if I'm in a 2 receiver league and I have a flex, I'm definitely looking at other options first. And I'm definitely playing matchups, and he's definitely not a set and forget in my starting lineup. That's for sure. I just think if you're in a 3 receiver league, I think you might still start him at wide receiver 3. So I guess I'm leaning towards patience with him because he's got a track record to prove it. He's produced at a good level for a long time. And so you just think that, or you hope that he'll be able to help bring this offense from nowhere to somewhere. And maybe the Giants is exactly the team they need to get rolling. Maybe the game against the Giants is exactly what they, but yeah, the Raiders game scares me for sure. So whatever happens this upcoming week with Amari Cooper, I'm definitely not expecting the same thing for the Raiders.
Put him on your sit list for next week. Lee says he's starting Cooper this week. Yeah, I mean, there's also it's going to come down to roster, how your roster looks as well. So as you mentioned there, if you're in the chat with us, if you have a guy that you want us to talk about, panic or patient, if you have a question about it, let us know. Throw the name in the chat as we talk about our last player here and tight end Dalton Kincaid, tight end 21 so far. It had a better week 2, but he still had less than 10 PPR points. Yep. Josh, where are you going, panic or patient?
I'm patient. So I got him last year as a rookie, and I started him without even thinking about it for the first few weeks of the season, just waiting for when he was going to turn it up. And he got off to a slow start. It seemed like he was getting acclimated for a while, didn't quite put together any good numbers. But then by the mid-season, end of season, he was a touchdown threat on every drive. He was getting a ton of targets. He looked really good. So I'm still hoping that he's just off slow out of the gates as Buffalo figures out, or Josh Allen figures out who he's going to target on a regular basis, because they have a lot of new receivers in Buffalo, or they don't have their same receiving core in Buffalo. So I still feel good about Dalton Kincaid. I know last week people were upset at Josh Allen and the whole offense. They put up a lot of points. They dominated the game, but they didn't have great fantasy weeks. But that game was in check, right? James Cook had a huge game, and they didn't need it to do anything because they were not losing that game at any point in time. And so I think what fantasy owners need is for the Bills to get into some shootouts, get into some competitive games, kind of like the Arizona game. And James Cook has been amazing. I'm hard pressed to believe he's going to get this many touchdowns going forward. I think the touchdowns will even out. I think Kincaid will be in line for some more. I'm being patient, but that's also because I've been counting on him, and so I'm a little bit biased in that regard. So, he's such a receiver talent at tight end that I think there's no reason not to get him more targets. He caught all 4 of his last week, and I think he'll get at least 6 or 7 a game going forward would be my prediction. So if he does that, I think we're going to be pretty content with where he is.
Yeah, James Cook, my flag plant running back. Great week there. So last chance to get anything in the chat. If you want us to talk about panic or patient, we will be moving on to party or pass tonight next.
Did Lee put in the chat Anthony Richardson as a panic? He said it could be a problem. Is that what he meant by that?
You're right. Let me talk about my Dalton Kincaid, and then we'll talk about Anthony Richardson real fast and any others that flow into the chat over the next 30 or 45 seconds or so. I'm also patient, though, with you. The Bills only had 18 targets in this game. They got out of hand. Like you said, James Cook just had an absolute masterclass of a day. And Dalton Kincaid had 4 of those targets, so 22% target share in week 2. Second on the team, only Khalil Shakir had more targets than him in week 2. So I think that it will come, and it'll come, in bunches, and I think Dalton Kincaid will be just fine. So I just want to get that stat out there because things will be fine for Dalton Kincaid. Yep. Anthony Richardson, as somebody who's holding an Anthony Richardson for MVP bet, I made in middle of July. So I thought, why not? He's a second-year guy coming in. Jalen Hurts did it. Patrick Mahomes did it. Lamar Jackson did it when he was a second-year guy. Anthony Richardson could do it as a second-year guy. Doesn't look great so far for a Rich. Where are you at with AR-15?
I totally get the fear of Anthony Richardson. He's kind of my ride or die this year in one of my leagues I care the most about. He's one of my. I had him last year, devastated when he got hurt, and I'm all in on Anthony Richardson this year. I think the big plays will even out. I think, he had to play in Lambeau last week. The Packers have a much better defense they did last year. I think, you're always going to hate his completion percentage. I'm not sure he'll
Yep.
throw for higher completion percentage than like 55%, but I think he'll always be good for some rushing yards. And I think, I think he had a lot of like, yeah, I don't know. I think he'll be okay. I'm still a believer personally, but not from I'd be a little bit more worried if I was a Colts fan. I see Kev just popped into the chat. Sorry, Kev.
Yeah, he says that there's a lot of drops. I haven't actually watched
Yeah.
any of the Colts games yet, so
Yeah.
I'd be interested to go back and look at that.
I buried the lead. Josh Downs is coming back, isn't he?
Yeah.
Kev can double check that. Josh Downs is the guy he's got chemistry with. I think that's going to help him a lot. And he's got to start using Michael Pittman more. Like he has a lot of growing to do, but he's still very, very raw. And I think that with the talent there, you're going to have to take a couple of duds, but when he hits, you're going to win your week. So,
and it's going to be a couple duds coming up, right?
Right.
Actually, I'm going to talk more about him. He's spoiler. He is my sit of the week.
Mm-hmm.
They got the Bears and Steelers coming up. I'm like,
yeah,
that's tough, and
is
it's really tough because this Colts team who had aspirations of winning this AFC South division is now potentially, they're eyeing 0-3. Hopefully, I mean, I think they're a better football team than the Bears overall, but you got two really, really talented defenses coming up. If you guess don't look, but where do you think Richardson stands right now overall in quarterbacks?
Overall quarterback fantasy ranking?
Yeah, fantasy ranking.
I think his first week was probably good enough to be in the top 10. I'm going to say he's QB like 9 or so. Eight
he's sitting at QB 8. He puts up 27 fantasy points in week 1. So he's okay.
Right.
Because he's going to run the football. And so I'm not worried about him in fantasy. He might not be a great NFL quarterback, but we don't really care about that in fantasy football.
Nope.
So we don't care about that. Lees has a lot of overthrows for him. And might be back this week, probably next for Josh Downs. So we will see about him. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate that. Hit that like button with if you're here. We're going to go and talk about party or pass. So these are players that have showed out that we weren't necessarily expecting them maybe to be as good as they've been so far. And we're going to talk, are we going to party with them? Are we going to pass on them and let our league mates spend all the waiver money on them or go all in on a trade on them, whatever you want to call it. So if there's guys out there that you want us to talk about, please just throw them in the chat. We would love to talk about them. We will start here at quarterback once I get this going. Not going. There we go. Quarterback, Baker Mayfield was on this list last week, and then he just turns around and does it again this week.
Seriously.
QB1, back-to-back top 5 performances here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneer, Baker Mayfield. Josh, you ready to party?
No, I'm still passing. I feel like I have a personal vendetta against Baker Mayfield. Like I refuse to accept that he's good, but he had a rushing touchdown. That's not going to happen every week. So that boosted his score overall. He didn't even throw for 200 yards. He's got that Denver defense coming up this week, and I think that Tampa Bay is going to win that game. But I think that it's going to be more dink and dunks. It's going to be more, defensive battle type of thing. In fact, I don't like the receivers in Tampa Bay this week because of that matchup going forward. But I don't know. I must be the most stubborn person of all time because people out there saying, well, he's got 2 weeks now in a row. Like, when are you going to come on board with Baker Mayfield? But I'm still passing. Yeah. I think there are better options with more upside. And 2 weeks is decently consistent so far, but I don't know. Still nervous.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were taking week 2 and they're just piling on because week 1, he was great against the Washington Commanders, who, I mean, the Giants, although they don't have a kicker apparently, or he got hurt early in the game or whatever, so they lose. But they scored 3 touchdowns against this Commanders defense. So the Commanders defense is really bad. He does get that rushing touchdown that kind of bails him out here. Also, if you give me a quarterback stat line that's 185 yards and a touchdown and tell me he's the 5th overall quarterback on the week, like that doesn't feel great. Or I'm going to think it's like Caleb Williams, Anthony Richardson, maybe even Lamar Jackson, right? Like that's what I'm going to assume it is, not Baker Mayfield. I think this actually has more to do, in my opinion, has more to do with just the quarterback landscape right now in fantasy football is pretty rough, right? And you
Right.
kind of touched
Absolutely.
on at the beginning of the show about these Russian quarterbacks are starting to separate themselves. It's because these pocket passers are they're just not looking great in terms of fantasy football right now. Jared Goff has had a tough start to the season. Matthew Stafford doesn't have an offensive line, and all his weapons are hurt. Patrick Mahomes hasn't looked great to start the season. Joe Burrow, all these pocket passer types are just not really getting it done. Nobody's throwing for 400 yards passing in the NFL anymore. And so it's allowing guys like Baker Mayfield to throw for 185 yards, but run in one touchdown. And now he's a top 5 quarterback. So I'm full pass on this. I don't think it sustains at all. And I'm totally willing to eat crow if it does sustain. So
Absolutely.
all right, running back, very surprising to me anyways. Not surprising if it was like week 17, but in week 2, Braylon Allen, backup running back for the New York Football Jets, running back 6 in week 2, PPR leagues and non-PPR. Like, it doesn't even matter what type of league you're in.
Right.
He was running back 6 in every facet of fantasy football. I'm ready to party, Josh.
Yeah.
I'm ready to party, but I'm going to lower my expectations. This isn't going to be a huge rager, right? But it's going to be a little bit more than that awkward party you talked about last week. Right? Maybe this party's like we're just going out to the field. There's a bonfire. We're having a good time. Music's flowing, and we all go home at a decent time. But I'm ready to party because we know that Braylon Allen is an actual good football player. And if Breece Hall wasn't there, he would be a Jordan Mason. Like Jordan Mason is a guy we're starting each and every week. If Breece Hall were to go down, Braylon Allen is a must start each and every week. So I think this just showed us how talented this kid is. And I do think that the Jets will continue to use him.
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers is like 60 years old, man. Like he can't just drop back 100 times anymore. So, and you don't really want to give Breece Hall 40 carries a game. So I think they're going to mix in Braylon Allen quite a bit, especially early in the season. I don't know necessarily that you can start him each and every week, but put him on your bench. And when you get into these like bye weeks or you're dealing with injuries such as Isaiah Pacheco, maybe you have to start a Braylon Allen. So I think he's definitely worth being on your bench.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm partying as well with the caveat that you understand what your expectations are, right? Understand that he's not the primary option, and his touches are going to be a little bit varied over the next few weeks, depending on how much he gets used. But he had 4 targets and 7 carries last week. That's super, and he did a lot with them. Like you said, he showed his talent. He's gonna really demand to at least get some more touches going forward. And so, yeah, like you said, don't start him every week, like immediately, but take a look and watch his usage go up over the next few weeks. And then maybe you can throw him in as a high upside flex so I think it's a party because it's looking really good, right? It's looking like he's going to get more. It would make more sense for him to get more than less. And you just got to be realistic. He's not going to take too much away from Breece Hall right this second. So,
yeah. I wonder what I didn't even look at just the snap count. So 35%, Breece Hall at 72%. If you're going to get, if when he's in the game, he's going to get the touches, you kind of like that.
right.
Don't mind that at all. It's better. I think it probably, you would think it might hurt Breece Hall, but Breece Hall was also top 5 running back. So maybe it's not actually, maybe that's not going to hurt Breece Hall either. It's just going to be a 2-headed top 10 monster there in New York. Sports and Money KC back. Not worried about Atlanta either. Yeah, I think the Chiefs roll Sunday Night Football. Let's go. If you're here with us tonight, thank you so much. I say it a lot, I know, but we do appreciate all the love and all the support each and every Wednesday night. We're talking about party or pass. What player do you have on your team that you're thinking about? Should you be selling high or should you ride it out and keep putting them in your starting lineup? Throw them in the chat. We will talk about them. But first, we're going to talk about this wide receiver out of New Orleans. Josh, Rashid Shaheed is a top 10 wide receiver through 2 weeks.
Who would have
Party
thought?
or pass?
I said, I wrote on our note sheet, I wrote party. Why the hell not? I mean,
Why not, baby? Let's go.
He's only got 7 catches on the year, but it's just for 1,000,000 yards per reception, basically. So, I mean, even if I don't believe in the Saints offense for the full season. Like, I don't believe that they're going to keep up at this clip that they're at right now. And it might even end as early as this week. Because they have a tough matchup against the Eagles, but then again, the Eagles don't exactly stifle any passing games, and so even if the Eagles beat the Saints, you could very likely see at least 3 attempts 50, 60 yards downfield to Shaheed, and right now he's hitting all those. So why not? Like he's way better than a lot of options on guys that you could have that would just get like 3 catches for 40 yards. So. There's supposedly the concern is that if you're a believer in Olave, I mean, I flag planted for Olave, like he's going to start taking targets, but even that doesn't scare me because Shaheed's not a target hog. Like he's not a 10 target a game type of guy. If you give him 4 to 5 deep shots and then a couple other ones, like he could put up like he's going to be maybe touchdown dependent, but it's always going to be a long one. So like it's a weird, so far it's been a weird level of consistency that you don't expect from a deep threat, but why not? Like ride this Rashid Shaheed like deep pass extravaganza while you can. Because
they're connecting on it, right?
Yeah.
That's the big thing there, and they haven't really targeted the wide receivers. I mean, Alvin Kamara went off in this game, right? What he had 4 touchdowns,
4 touchdowns. Yeah,
he just absolutely ran all over this Dallas Cowboys defense. But Shaheed is going to be that burner down the field, the deep bomb, the Alex Pierce, the Xavier Worthies, the Rashid Shaheed. It's like, but they're making it happen, and they're being successful with it.
Yep.
This is Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed's team. Like there's nobody else.
Yep.
Nobody else is out here running. Bub Means is on here.
Mm-hmm.
Mason Tipton had 1 target in week 1.
I have A.T. Perry in a deep dynasty league, and that he's not amounted
0 targets, right, through 2 weeks. And then you got the Juwan Johnsons and Foster Moreau's and Taysom Hills, and then obviously Alvin Kamara will be. But even then, Kamara only had two catches in week 2. Like he just went off on the ground.
Yeah.
So I say all that to say, like, this is absolutely Rashid Shaheed's and Chris Olave's passing offense. It's going to flow through the 2 of them. And if they can sustain this, then Shaheed's going to need to be a guy that you're probably flex worthy each and every week. And you just have to know there's going to be a bust game.
Yeah.
It might not be against the Eagles because I'm not really scared of the Eagles right now, but there's going to be some games that they just don't connect on that. And he ends up, with 4 or 5 targets, but only 1 catch for 25 yards and no touchdown. Right. You're just going to have that, right? You can have that with any wide receiver. But, yeah, I'm partying with Rashid Shaheed for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, our tied in for party or pass this week, Mike Gesicki. He now resides in Cincinnati, plays for the Bengals, kind of a journeyman. Well, he was in New England for a while and Miami for a little bit.
Yep.
And now he is in Cincinnati. He is the tight end number 5 in week 2 against the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm passing here. I think that he's going to be stream worthy over time, depending on, matchups or whatnot, but not necessarily a guy that I'm looking to go, spend a bunch of fab last night on or try to trade for right now. I don't really believe in the consistency here. Hopefully T. Higgins for this team comes back sometime soon. That'll take targets away. Jamar Chase got, shut down by the Chiefs. That's what the Chiefs do. They try to take away your best. Your best. Very similar to the New England Patriots. I know they get compared to the New England Patriots all the time. It's annoying, but that's what they're doing. The same thing the Patriots used to do on defense, right? They would always take away your number 1,
right,
and then see who else could beat you. That's kind of what the Chiefs have been doing the past year and a half, is just trying to take away your number 1. So not worried about Chase, not worried about Higgins if he ever makes it back, which I think will just hurt Mike Gesicki.
Yeah, I'm passing on Gesicki as well because of a lot of what you said. The main one being Higgins is not out forever, and when he comes back, I don't see the need to be force feeding Mike Gesicki, and he's never in his career. You know, I was high on him when he was with Miami. I was like, high powered offense. He's got to just get some. He's going to get some, you know, some volume of targets, and he couldn't even sustain target volume with Miami's high powered offense. Like, I know Burrow can really sling it, but I'm not. There's going to be no consistency with Gesicki. I mean, Eric All Jr., the rookie tight end they have, made some nice plays against the Chiefs too. Like, there's going to be too many mouths to feed when Higgins is back. This is very much feels like a nice week for him. And if you happen to have streamed him, you feel like a genius. But I'm not counting on it going forward.
All right. Before we get into our starts and sits for week 3, we got a trade question. And Adrian, I need to know what side you're on. Should I trade Kyren and Tank for CeeDee Lamb? So I read this as like you are getting rid of Kyren and Tank and you're getting CeeDee Lamb. Because if that's the case, I want CeeDee Lamb. Like I'm all in on CeeDee Lamb on this trade.
Yeah, that's a smash accept right there for me as well.
So if you're on the other side, if you're saying, hey, I have CeeDee Lamb, should I go get Kyren and Tank Dell? No. But if you have that opportunity to get Lamb for Kyren, Tank Dell, I think, will have his games. But I'm concerned about Kyren because this offensive line is bad. Arizona's defense is not good. They are not good. And the Los Angeles Rams offensive line made them look phenomenal. So that's what I'm worried about. Also, with no Puka and no Cooper Kupp, I mean, what are you going to do on offense? Throw it to Jordan Whittington or run with Kyren Williams? Well, everybody knows what they're going to do, right? He got offered Lamb. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even be thinking about it anymore. I'd go right to my computer or my phone right now, and I'd hit accept. I mean, I would smash accept that. CeeDee Lamb is a game changer. He was drafted 102, 101, whatever it was in your league for a reason. There's no worry about CeeDee Lamb. He is on the field. He is paid. He is going to have a great season so long as he stays healthy and all that.
Yeah, the advantage of having CeeDee Lamb over most other receivers is going to be way bigger than the gap between Kyren Williams and a lesser running back. And especially like Tank Dell has too much target competition right now. I'm a huge Tank Dell guy, and I've been starting him in one of my leagues, but I'm definitely playing I need him to hit a big play sort of deal or get some of those rushes he gets and take it down. But he's way too unreliable. CeeDee Lamb is a proven, consistent, dominant fantasy starter. And like you mentioned, the offensive line in Los Angeles is banged up. The receiving core is banged up. Their defense isn't very good. The Rams, I predict, are going to be losing a lot of games, and they're going to need to throw anyway. And so you're just not going to – I don't think you're going to get the efficiency out of Kyren that we got last year, right? If this was last year, it's a little bit more fair on that side, but still, the CeeDee Lamb is just – he's in that upper echelon of receivers that you can't really – that the value is just so much greater, right? So I'm smash accepting that, taking Lamb and being real happy about it for sure.
Maybe we need to put CeeDee Lamb in like the panic or patient. It sounds like somebody in Adrian's league is panicking on CeeDee Lamb. 17 targets through the first 2 weeks. He's got 6 more than the next closest guy on the team. This is CeeDee Lamb's offense. Like this is what Dak wants to throw and feed Lamb, and I think Lamb is set to have quite a bit of big games upcoming. So
for sure,
I'm glad we could do that for you. Hopefully you hit that. Thank you for being here, Adrian. Appreciate
it.
You. All right, starts and sits of the week. Last week, I didn't have a chance to like completely go through all of them. I know my starts were actually kind of bad outside of my Malik Neighbors call. So hopefully I can do a little bit better this week. But I guess I'll kick us off at quarterback. Quarterback, I'm going to start Jared Goff. Brutal through 2 weeks. So don't kick me just quite yet. I understand he's been brutal. But the thing with Jared Goff, twofold. One, they're going to continue to throw the ball. We're not worried about that. I know they got the running game, but they're going to continue to throw the ball. But the most important thing about Jared Goff this week is he's facing the same Arizona Cardinals team that I continue to tell you. Their defense is actually bad.
Yep.
I love this game. I think this game could have great shootout potential there.
Mhm.
It's an afternoon game, 3:25. Is it in Arizona? So it's in the Dome. I guess it would have been in Dome even if it's in Detroit, but it's in the Dome. Love this game. Love a lot of players from this game. But yeah, Jared Goff is a guy that you can go ahead and start. And then I mentioned it earlier. AR-15, Anthony Richardson is going to be my sit of the week.
How dare you?
I just I'm just not quite ready to see him on my team this week facing that Chicago Bears defense. That defense is actually legit, and Richardson could definitely run and get you in the top 12. I just don't think he's going to have huge upside this week against that tough defense. So go ahead and feel free to sit him. That's not dropping him. Just put him on your bench for a week. Play a guy like Jared Goff.
Yeah, because the inaccuracy of Richardson is a fear. He had 3 picks last week, too. He didn't just have a bad passing game. He also turned the ball over 3 times. In a lot of leagues, that's -6 points. So at least that's what it was for me. So I hear you on that. My quarterback start is actually Brock Purdy, and he might be someone you're already starting, but to me, he's always been kind of a fringe starter because of all the weapons they have in San Francisco. But I had an up-close look. They played my Vikings. My Vikings won, by the way. We beat the 49ers. That was pretty impressive.
Heck yeah.
And Purdy threw for over 300.
2-0 squads here.
I know. It's awesome. He threw for over 300 yards. He looked more accurate than I've given him credit for over the past couple of years. He still had his missed throws here and there, but he just looked really crisp and really efficient. Kittle had a big game. Debo had a big game. And they get the Rams they get the Rams this week, and they need to rebound. They need to reestablish themselves as top team in the West. And I just think they're going to have a field day. So even if the game gets out of hand, I think that'll be because Purdy's got 3 touchdown passes and no picks and about 300 yards again. And I think you'll feel pretty good about that. My sit right now is Derek Carr. And I know we just talked up Rashid Shaheed and the deep ball. But the Saints still make me nervous from a complete offensive standpoint. We also talked about they have the Eagles, and the Eagles don't have the most lights out pass defense. But outside of that late drive by Kirk against Atlanta, they held them in check for the most part. And I think with their front 7, they can give Derek Carr some fits. I saw a post online today about the PFF grades for the Saints offensive line, and they all look really good right now. But I don't know if that's sustainable. I don't know if their line is as good as it is, or as good as the numbers would say right now. And so I'm predicting a lot of pressure against the Saints, and that's something that's going to rattle Derek Carr, and then won't have as much time to get to Shaheed downfield. And so the reason I picked him as my sit is because I know a lot of people are going to be, excited to start him after 2 games in a row where the Saints have looked really, really good. And it's more of a temper expectations. I don't think you should absolutely not start Derek Carr, especially if he's your best option. But I don't see him being as productive as he's been, and I think he might come back down to earth with the whole Saints offense really, or even Kamara to an extent this week against the Eagles. So
Philadelphia giving up over 150 yards rushing per game through 2 weeks though, so definitely could be another Kamara, Jamal Williams type of game, and maybe that keeps Derek Carr in check as well.
That's true.
All right, Josh, why don't we roll right into running back? Who's your start and sit of the week? And I'm not stamping this start of the week. I'm not. I want. How do I disclose that I'm out on the start of the week? I
ADP,
respect you for going there, but I am out on the start of the week.
Yes, ADP does not endorse this following start. So
do I need to take the bite size stuff? Bite size is going to drop us if you say this.
I'm going to get a lot of unfollows after this one. No. I feel like there's a DeAndre Swift game incoming, and take that for what it's worth. If you are so far gone on DeAndre Swift, you should stop listening to me right now. But he had 10 carries in week 1. He had 14 carries last week. He's getting the workload. There's no sign of Roshan Johnson. I know Khalil Herbert vultured his touchdown the other night, which was a bummer. And his efficiency hasn't been good. But I'm, the whole same reason I'm being patient on Caleb Williams for one more week. The Bears have faced some really tough defenses to start the season. And I think against the Colts, they're going to find a way to get clicking a little bit. And again, you could easily argue in the other direction. So this is a not endorsed start, but I think we have a DeAndre Swift game incoming, and so I'm kind of calling it out right now. But I'll be the first one next week to call it my biggest loss if he doesn't have a game. So I'll take the L if it's there. I'm going out on a limb with that. And it's funny because my sit is also weird, and I just feel like my running back picks are weird here because I have I decided I wrote sit James Conner, and I know you may not even be able to sit James Conner. You probably shouldn't sit James Conner because of who you have after him and what he's done so far because he's been killing it. But the Lions are like a top 3 defense against running backs in fantasy, and so while you can score on their defense and while Kyler has been looking really good, I don't see the running lanes being open for James Conner this week. I think it's going to depend on his targets out of the backfield, and he doesn't always get the majority of targets. He's been doing really well so far this year, but he ran for over 100 yards last week. I don't think that's happening again, and I think he'll be a little bit more stifled than you would be expecting if you're going in to start James Conner. So it feels backwards, but I'm starting DeAndre Swift and sitting James Conner for what that's worth.
It does feel backwards, but we're here to give our takes, and that's a good take. A good take that most people aren't going to have, right? Like in a sense of like most people are like, no, there's no way I can start him. Well, if you're leaning towards starting him, listen to Josh and throw him in there and hope it works out. So my start of the week is a guy that you're going to find kind of outside the top 24 in rankings this week is Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford had, 75% of the snaps in week 1. Not as much. I mean, it was a workload share with him and Deontay Foreman in week 2, but Ford was way, way more efficient. 7 carries, had 64 yards on 7 carries. Like the guy's definitely efficient. And I think this Cleveland Browns offense, if they're going to get going in the right direction, they kind of need to get back to that like bell cow that they used to have where they had Nick Chubb. I think Jerome Ford can be that. Plus they're going against the Giants who are giving up they're like the 28th worst run defense in the NFL through the first 2 weeks. Yeah. So I really think that Cleveland's going to have to look in the mirror and start relying on this run game a little bit more. I don't think that means Deontay Foreman is not going to be relevant in this game in terms of NFL, and he's definitely not relevant for fantasy. But I think Jerome Ford, with the efficiency that he has opportunity here against a pretty poor New York Giants defense. Yeah. And then my sit of the week is probably also going to be surprising after 2 weeks. I'm going J.K. Dobbins. I get it. He's been dominating. Yep. But y'all, the Chargers have not played anyone worth a lick on defense. Like, I mean, they've really played some poor defenses. J.K. Dobbins has looked great. The Chargers have ran the ball. Like, both of these guys are getting like 18 touches a game. I hit them and Gus Edwards. Dobbins looks like the better runner. He definitely is. Yep. But I'm just here to caution you this week against that Steelers defense. That feels like the Steelers and Bears have come up a lot tonight. But these defenses are just very, very good. And John Harbaugh might want to run it down their throat, but it's probably not going to work like it worked against the Panthers and the Raiders in week 1, maybe. And so now you get the Steelers defense. I just don't think it's going to be worth it. And again, you may not have the ability to sit. You probably have the ability to sit J.K. Dobbins because you didn't draft him high like you drafted James Conner to be your RB 1 or 2. Right. Yep. You didn't do that with J.K. Dobbins, so you probably actually have the ability to sit him. So if you do, just go ahead and at least temper expectations. But I would be putting him on my bench this week if possible.
Yeah, that's fair. You mentioned the competition they've played against. They're in Pittsburgh, then they have KC, and then a bye, and then they're in Denver. So from a matchup standpoint, I mean, Dobbins is in maybe a sell high candidate.
Sell high. That's as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Maybe you just get out there right like this end of this week and try to move on from him.
Right. And Jerome Ford, you mentioned, like he's been like criminally underranked this whole time he's been filling in for Nick Chubb, in all honesty. Like he's always produced. So I think it's a good start. Even though the Browns offense isn't exactly exciting. So
So J.K. Dobbins in PPR points over 20 points 2 weeks in a row. He's RB4.
RB4.
So let's see. Tony Pollard or J.K. Dobbins? Rest of the season. Tony Pollard over 15 points both weeks and RB12 for the Tennessee Titans.
Whew. I mean,
like, would you trade J.K. Dobbins straight up for Tony Pollard right now? Tajay Spears got a little bit of injury concerns.
Oh, it's so tough because speaking of injury concerns, I mean, I don't want to say it out loud, but I'm not. It's hard for me to envision J.K. Dobbins playing a full season, and I know that's terrible to say, but the poor guy's been really unlucky with knee injuries and such. But I will say from a backfield competition standpoint, I'd probably rather have J.K. Dobbins. They want to run the ball. One of my starts from last week, Justin Herbert against a terrible Carolina team, didn't exactly light it up. This team just wants to run the ball and win in the trenches, which is fine. And Gus Edwards is a very vanilla type of running back, right? He'll get some short yardage. He's a bruiser. He's north-south. He's fine. But J.K. Dobbins is the one that's going to make the big plays. He's going to be the one that outperforms Gus Edwards for sure.
He's coming off the Achilles injury too, though.
I know. Well, if I'm taking injury concerns all the way out of it, I'm looking at backfield competition. I would probably lean Dobbins over Pollard, but I don't. But if I'm the Tony Pollard owner, I'm not trading for J.K. Dobbins right now. If that makes sense.
Okay, rest of the season. Do you want J.K. Dobbins or David Montgomery? Another backfield that shares a backfield.
Right.
RB13 through 2 weeks. Over 15 points both weeks. PPR.
I'm going to go Montgomery here by a very slight margin just because I think this Lions offense is going to take off and there'll be enough to go around, and he's proven it over time. It's tough, though. It's
Brian Robinson Jr., the Commanders.
He was one of my starts last week.
Over 14 points both weeks.
He killed it again.
RB14.
Yeah.
Oof. Rest of the season. J.K. Dobbins or Brian Robinson Jr., who has no running back.
Really none. Have the Commanders played any tough defenses yet? That's my thing. Are they going to be exposed?
I mean, but the Chargers haven't either.
That's true.
All right, one more. Kyron Williams with the bad offensive line and no wide receivers.
Oh, J.K. Dobbins. I'm very nervous about Kyron right now.
All right, we'll move on. I am all of those guys over J.K. Dobbins. I am. Really? If I had J.K. Dobbins, I'd be trading him for nothing right now. Lee says trade him for DeAndre Swift. I may not go that far.
Hey, Lee,
I love the idea, but I don't think I'm going that far. But yeah, I'm. Like, I guess we're not on party or pass anymore, and I still have that up on our thing because I'm a noob at this apparently. But like, if that was a party or pass, I'm passing. I want everybody to like hear me. Like all of those, I'm all those guys over DeAndre Swift or J.K. Dobbins. So okay. Let's get into wide receivers.
Yes.
Wide receiver starts of the week for me. I'm going Xavier Worthy here. Kind of a down game in week 2 after, you probably didn't even start in week 1. He has a good game. You go starting week 2, doesn't have a good game. Now you're frustrated. What are you going to do with him? I'm saying put him right back in your lineup. No Isaiah Pacheco. Carson Steele is not. I don't think he's the guy. I think he's going to be the guy, but he's a fullback. He's going to get short yardage. He's going to be fine, but he's not going to be, super explosive. Samaje Perine was cut by the freaking Broncos for goodness sakes. Like, yeah, he'll be in there to catch passes. But my whole point of all this is like, they don't have Isaiah Pacheco anymore. They don't have anybody who's close to Isaiah Pacheco. I think they throw the ball significantly more. Their pass rate over expectation seems to always be in the positive. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up like top 5 pass rate over expectation the rest of the season, right. Which to me means that Xavier Worthy is going to get more opportunities. Plus, Xavier Worthy might get some run in the backfield. Yeah. I mean, he's got the speed to do it. So I wouldn't mind seeing him out of the backfield a little bit there as well. against the Atlanta Falcons. And then my sit of the week, we kind of buried the lead on the Tua stuff. John talked about Tua last night on Necessary Roughness and concussions and all that. So go check that out. But for me, Skylar Thompson starting at quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. I think you just have to sit Jalen Waddle. You can't sit Tyreek, but I do think Jalen Waddle is a guy that if I'm staring down a flex decision, I'm probably most likely passing on Waddle in most situations this week. I want to see it from Skylar Thompson, K-State guy right here in my home state. But so we're all kind of giddy to see him start another game. But I don't think he's the answer, and I don't like starting Jalen Waddle with him at quarterback this week. So I'm sitting Jalen Waddle.
Yep, completely fair. You stole my sit. I was gonna go Jalen Waddle as well. I don't think without Tua in there, I just don't think that there's enough. I don't think Skylar Thompson is enough to distribute the ball as well.
Yeah,
Tyreek Hill's still gonna get his to an extent, and they're gonna have to feed Achane in that backfield a little bit more.
I do think they will feed Achane. He looked pretty good against the Bills too.
Oh yeah. So my start is a little bit more of an obscure one. I'm starting Darnell Mooney this week. I've always liked Darnell Mooney. To me, he's needed a quarterback to really kind of blossom. And I feel like we have some early chemistry with him and Kirk Cousins. You know, we talked about Atlanta playing your Chiefs this week, and the Chiefs, what do? They take away your best option, right? So the Chiefs are going to be focused on Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson to some extent. I'm not picking the Falcons to win at all, but I think as a part of moving the ball and getting their yards, I think Mooney's going to have a role there. He had some nice plays Monday night against the Eagles, and I think him and Kirk are a good connection there. So I like him. I'm not starting him as like my wide receiver 2. I should specify this would be like a flex guy after your 2 main guys. I think if you have a toss up between a couple running backs, a couple of receivers, I think Mooney to me is one that looks a little promising going forward. My sit, because I couldn't use Jalen Waddle, this is a really weird one. Again, I put Mike Evans on here. The Bucs have that matchup against Denver that I don't like. Chris Godwin is off to a really good start. Mike Evans only had 3 catches the other day against Detroit after a big week 1 with 2 touchdowns and like 5 catches. And I don't envision this Bucs Broncos game being very high scoring. I think the Bucs will win like a 16-13 type of field goal battle, and without a touchdown, Mike Evans, as Hall of Famer, he's done amazing things, but I don't see him putting up a ton of points without a touchdown, and I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of passing touchdowns in this game. So, it's kind of a bad one for start sit, I suppose, because if you drafted Mike Evans, you probably can't sit him. He's probably drafted as your wide receiver 1. But I'm just, temper your expectations or get creative, maybe do something crazy, and then come yell at me on Twitter when he goes off for 2 touchdowns. You know where to find me.
I was just gonna mention your Mooney pick. Chiefs, gave it up big game to Isaiah Likely, who's 3 or 4 on the passing ring, and then Andre Yoshivas catches 2 touchdowns against the Chiefs for the Bengals. So guys like Mooney, who are 2 or 3 down the road, are the guys who are finding the open spots against the Chiefs defense, against the 31st ranked pass defense in terms of yardage per game. Now they've also played the Baltimore Ravens and Cincinnati Bengals,
right?
And they're 2-0. But that's just one thing that you got to keep that in mind. Like it's
right.
These 2 and 3 and 4 pass catchers, they're the ones finding the open spots against the Chiefs. So I really like that. I think that's a sharp call. And if you're playing a DFS game on Sunday night, a single game or whatever, and you want to run out Rashee Rice, captain with Mahomes, like bringing back a guy like Mooney, it would be the perfect stack, I think.
It'll be real cheap for you, DFS.
Yeah.
So
I like that a lot. All right, tight end start of the week. Josh, I'll let you get us started.
This is I should specify this is a streaming start of the week. This is not a guy.
I try to look for that too. Not to cut you off, but I ended up not finding one because it's kind of tough. A lot of the streaming tight ends have some tough matchups this week.
Yeah.
So I went with like a run of the mill start of the week, but I do like the tight end idea of like streaming tight end of the week.
Right. Right. And so Zach Ertz is my start. Definitely not if you drafted one of, like, if you have like a top 8 tight end, I would say you're not looking at Zach Ertz or anything like that, because the Commanders' offense isn't super great. The Bengals just proved their defense is kind of turning around, and the Commanders have offensive line issues, so who knows if Jaden Daniels will have any time to throw the ball with Trey Hendrickson running at him as well. But I just like the target share. I was high on Ben Sinnott, their rookie tight end. He hasn't seen a single target. John Bates, the other guy on the roster, has seen like 2 in 2 games, and so Zach Ertz is like a desperation stream. If you need somebody, if I'm trying to think of what scenario that would even be, but if you are streaming week to week, I think you could do a lot worse there. And then my sit is actually, I'm not on the Hunter Henry hype train yet. I know he had a huge game last week. His week 1 was mediocre. This Patriots offense still needs to prove it a little bit more to me as well. And he's been a guy that's been relatively touchdown heavy. I know he had a really good game last week. I'm not saying he didn't, but I don't know if he would have been a drafted tight end either. So if you're going on the waiver wire to get him, you would have already done that by now. But I don't know if I'm that excited to start him necessarily either. So I'm sitting Hunter Henry, and I'm streaming Zach Ertz if I'm desperate.
Hunter Henry, almost my biggest win of the week as my tight end flag plan. I said he's going to be our streaming tight end of the year. And
he might be
good week number 2. Wish we would have been on that one last week. Anton in the chat, I'm going to get to your question here momentarily. If anybody else has questions, questions for week 3, rest of the season type questions as Anton threw in the chat. Get them in now. We've got about 5 minutes left here as we finish up our week 3 episode of Another Damn Fantasy Podcast. My start of the week here, I'm going Dalton Schultz of the Houston Texans. We kind of talked about Nico Collins early in the show. Yeah, Nico is really the man. He's great. And Dalton Schultz has kind of been forgotten, I feel like, a little bit in Houston so far. You got Steph Diggs there. Tank Dell hasn't done much. But the Vikings have given it up through the air. I know they have a good pass rush, and the defense overall is pretty good, but their pass yardage is actually bottom 10 in the league. And so if the Houston Texans come out and try to throw the ball a little bit more, and Joe Mixon could be hurt and not playing, and maybe they don't want to run Cam Akers 25 times, I think they're going to have to pass the ball a little bit more, which opens up for Dalton Schultz volume a little bit there. So that's kind of the way I'm playing this. I think Houston just throws the ball a little bit more than they usually do, and they already throw the ball quite a bit. So give me Dalton Schultz there. And my sit of the week is a guy that you probably have started 2 weeks in a row in Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert has not really done much at all for you through the first 2 weeks of the season, but he's got that name. He's failed to hit like 8 PPR points. What is it? It's 7.1 and 6.8 PPR points. 6.8 shouldn't even been 6.8 if they just run the ball and then they don't even get the ball back, but he gets like one more catch at the end of the very end of the game for like another 10 yards.
Yep.
So you already, you kind of sucked out 2 more points out of it. It should have been less than 5.
Yep.
So I say all that because I don't think Dallas Goedert is really super involved. And if you were going to see a blow up Dallas Goedert game, it would have been with AJ Brown out last week.
Right.
It doesn't really happen there. Devonta Smith is the clear cut number 1 guy when AJ Brown is out. We've talked a lot about this Philadelphia Eagles New Orleans Saints game this week. I just have no interest playing Dallas Goedert in it.
Yeah, that's fair. And to piggyback on your Dalton Schultz pick, the Vikings gave up a ton to George Kittle, and I think we can compete and give Houston a run, but we're not going to stifle the tight end position there. So Dalton Schultz should have a decent game.
Wait, George Kittle just had a number 1. He was number 1 this week, wasn't he?
He had 7 for like 76 and a touchdown.
I think it was the best fantasy. I didn't even think about that against the Vikings. Yeah, he was the best one, 20.6 PPR points.
Yep.
Against the Vikings.
Yeah, he had.
Added to the stats of why you should be starting Dalton Schultz.
That's right. Wow. Exactly.
Are the Vikings bad against the tight end, or is that just like a?
Our secondary is kind of a hodgepodge, and against the 49ers, we had a lot of big defensive plays. We also gave up a ton of yards, and so I think that was part of it. Kind of like, you're never going to stop the 49ers offense completely anyway. But over the past couple of years, yes, we've been allergic to stopping things over the middle of the field. We've hated
Who did they play week 1?
The Giants.
But, that doesn't count. They don't even have a tight end.
Exactly. The Giants was a throwaway game, basically. So
Theo Johnson, 2.8 points.
Yeah.
I was just seeing if they had a good game. Lee says good show. KC Wi-Fi made it through 2 hours. Only an hour and a half, but yeah, the KC Wi-Fi is working today. Okay, Anton, I told you I'd get to your question. I'll get to it right now. Let me get all this junk off of our screen. Anybody else has questions? This is your last chance to get them in. Anton says, rest of season running back Josh Jacobs or Kyren Williams, half PPR. Josh, I'll let you take it first.
I am going to go Josh Jacobs here. Rest of season, because if half PPR, if it was full PPR, well, I don't know. I'm worried about the Rams offensive line. Kyren Williams is probably going to get more catches or more targets, but that offense scares me a little bit more, but especially because it's half PPR. I mean, Josh Jacobs just ran the ball 32 times for over 150 yards. Like,
yeah, he did.
In standard scoring, it's not even a question. In half PPR, I think we've seen what the Packers are going to do. And honestly, if I know Jordan Love didn't go on IR, so he might be back sooner than we think. But if they have to run any combination of Malik Willis or an injured Jordan Love, I mean, Josh Jacobs is their best bet. Their exciting rookie Marshawn Lloyd has been battling injuries since training camp, so he's not necessarily going to come in, or it doesn't look like he's going to come in and demand touches. So Josh Jacobs had, I think, 16 carries in week 1, 32 carries in week 2. So you're looking at a floor of probably 15 carries a game. And just because he doesn't have a ton of catches yet doesn't mean he's not going to get some. So I think that early reports suggest he's going to be easily the winner here. Kyren, because of his performance last year, if the Rams get their offensive line together, I don't want to say it's a landslide in favor of Josh Jacobs, but I think especially that half PPR scoring function there, I'm going to go Josh Jacobs pretty convincingly, I will say. Not like a landslide, but convincingly here.
Yeah, it's tough for Kyren because Kyren was the great, the great waiver wire pickup last year, yep. Him and Puka. And this Rams offense got Cooper Kupp back, and you just felt so good about the Rams offense coming in.
Right.
And literally 2 weeks into the season, it's just imploded.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going rest of the season, I'm going Josh Jacobs as well. You hit the nail on the head when you mentioned the 32 rushes. The volume is going to be there, and volume is king in fantasy football.
Yep.
And that's not to say the Rams couldn't say, like, look, we don't have any wide receivers. We're just going to give Kyren Williams the ball 30 times. They absolutely could do that. Like that could come to fruition. And if that happens, great. Like, you're going to love that for Kyren and for anybody who has Kyren. But I think that we already know that about the Green Bay Packers. They've already shown it. And even if Jordan Love comes back, this is a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. This isn't a team that is going to, waller over losing to the Eagles in week 1. This team was picked by many, many, many experts to be in the Super Bowl. Like, this is a really, really good football team. Great defense. They bring in Josh Jacobs so he can be the workhorse back. And Josh Jacobs, what was it? 2 years ago, he led the league in touches. Like the Raiders just handed him the ball every other play. And so I could definitely see the Green Bay Packers. I wasn't really high on him coming into the season. And I'm not necessarily, I don't think he ends up like a top 5 back, but I think this has a little to do with the Jordan Love injury to bumps Josh Jacobs' volume even more, and a lot to do with all the wide receivers in LA and that offensive line. So I think Kyren actually falls back down while Josh Jacobs gets a little bit of bump. So definitely on Josh Jacobs' train in this scenario as well, rest of season.
Yep. That makes sense to me.
All right, well, let's get out of here. Thank you all for being in the chat tonight. We appreciate it. Make sure you hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed to Bite Size Sports yet, hit that subscribe button. We go live 3 times a week. We got Necessary Roughness on Tuesday nights. Josh and I are here on Wednesday nights talking fantasy football. Thursday nights is our supersized sports right now. Kev and James, who are live like 5 nights a week on different YouTube channels, but they're here on Thursday nights with us on Bite Size Sports. NBA content is coming right around the corner. So if you like the NBA, come around, hit us up there, bitesizesports.com. Take a look there, see some of our written articles as well. But yeah, be a part of the Bite Size family. Discord link is in the description. So if you like Discord, just be a part of the Bite Size family. We're here and we just love talking sports. So hopefully you subscribe and be with us. So thank you all for being here. Josh, what do you got for the people on our way out?
I'm 2 for 2 on reacting to Vikings wins this season, so we'll see what happens if we ever lose a game. But it's hard to picture with Sam Darnold looking like the second coming of Randall Cunningham or Joe Montana or pick your elite core. I don't know why I named that.
We got to figure out a way to kind of slow down you Vikings fans. John last night talking about it. Now you're talking about tonight. Like, we got to do something about these Vikings fans around here.
No, it leads nicely. My podcast I do on my own is just my own fan delusion. I just analyze Vikings games after the fact and try to get my gut reactions. Pretty simple. You'll find me writing an article here and there when I have more time on Bite Size, and then on MikeandTheVikes.com. So if you stick around Bite Size Sports, you'll find me, and definitely find me on Twitter X. I'm never gonna figure that out. Find me online if you want to commiserate with your fantasy takes or blame me for your fantasy takes. I can step in for you. If you're starting DeAndre Swift this week, for example, and he sucks and you need someone to yell at, you can find me there.
Find Josh at JLime8 on X.
Not affiliated with Bite Size Sports, right?
Send him all the DMs about DeAndre Swift. Well, you can find me on the same X at TrevorS_FF. Follow the show at ADP podcast _ FF. Even if you're 0-2, don't give up. Don't quit. Hit the waiver wire. Hit the trade market. Get after it. Go get yourself a win. Get yourself back in playoff contention as we get, it's a long season. We got 9 more regular season weeks, 8 more, whatever it is. Long season ahead. Good luck in week 3, y'all. Hope it goes great. And don't forget, if you start DeAndre Swift, it's Josh's fault.
My fault.
I need to know everything, who and the what and the where, I need everything. Trust me, I hear what you're saying, but act like it's new what you're telling me. I'm curious, George, I hop in the Porsche, it's 5 and a horse, I'm ready for war, I'm coming for throats, to turn to a ghost, I need to know everything. Now you be surprised at the info you get is by letting them talk so